I was just watching something. Believe it or not, I brushed my fucking hair, okay? I just did a workout, but I do that quite often, so I'm already cooled down. So, I was just watching a video about how China got people in Canada to spray the weed with fentanyl before it was legal, before the weed was legal. That's where all that sprayed bad weed was coming from. People were selling bad, tainted weed all over Canada. It was only because of legalization that they weren't able to do it anymore, which is why when the tide turned on Trudeau, it was all the way turned before it even started turning. And that's the reason why. Because Canadians were pushing fentanyl for China on weed smokers, of all things, okay? It's a deadly poison. They wanted us dead because people who smoke marijuana are free thinkers. You know what I mean? They may be this, or they may be that, or they may be anything on the spectrum, but one thing they are is free thinkers. Okay? And there's always hope with that. Without it, no hope. There's no hope for us in Canada without discernment, without all of that. Anyway, that's not why I came on to this. That's not why I'm making this video, and I'm gonna upload it. That's because I didn't tell you about my previous lifetime. The first time that I woke up in this world. My last previous life, I remember dying. I spent my entire old age and middle age to old age actually running my business, employing people, giving them a good life. Whereas I lived very simply in a little hotel. I could have had a mansion. I lived in a little hotel where veterans tended to be, and that's where I was. I had a nice little lounge and a lobby. I loved it. And frankly, it had room service too. I think we were probably one of the first buildings to have like modern, well, almost modern plumbing and things like that too, because it was a hotel. And I was like perfectly happy to live there and not have a family. I knew I wasn't that kind of material. I wasn't marriage material. And I didn't have a problem with that. I never felt fear in my entire life. I was a kid that knew hunger, starvation, privation, and degradation from an early age because we were poor. We lived in a shack on the beach, probably Wales. And I ended up joining the British military, which was it was the making of me in that lifetime. Otherwise, I probably would have been a bushwhacker or a highway robber. No, I was good at billiards. I could have made a living off of that, and poker. But it wasn't called poker. In Europe, there's this game called Uno or something, and people have been playing it for hundreds of years. And billiards has been around for 800 years. So, and I was there in the 1600s, or possibly the early 1700s. I dated it. I actually proved that I lived in that house because it was the only, was it red brick? I can't remember now. It was the only building made out of those kind of bricks that were transported from a different area. It was the only one in London, so it had to be the one. And everything else made sense too. In fact, that place ended up being a museum, which when they found out I used to live there in another life, they made it into a sort of sanctuary for trans people, which they probably thought would piss me off, but it didn't. The only thing that pisses me off about it is that they wanted to piss me off, okay? Just because I wasn't gay in my last previous life or trans doesn't mean that I'm prejudiced against trans people. You mows, okay? You absolute idiots who think that. You're idiots, okay? You're morons. And you can go on Twitter, onto Canadian Fuji, Jesus Freak, that's me. And I'll tell you all about how stupid you are, because I found a whole lot of synonyms for the word stupid. And there are a lot in the English language, which shouldn't be surprising to anyone. The English language is the biggest double talk mind fuck of all languages anywhere except maybe Mandarin, where they no longer have a word for freedom or human rights. Hello! I thought they were reforming over there because we actually got to hear some opinions from some regular people, but apparently that was just for show, that they allowed us to hear that, because they're more oppressed there and enslaved than ever. And they're abusing children on the regular as a routine thing, and the government is what's doing it, okay? Communist government is 100% gangsters, corrupt, organized crime. 100%. And anybody who deals with them, also corrupt, okay? So your reputation just fell in the toilet, a lot of you. Anyways, I believed in by the book justice, but not to the point where we're not effective, you know. I was the one that made sure there was no looting or anything going on during the wars, and there was a lot of civil wars at that time. Anyway, I didn't make this video to talk about that lifetime, just to lead up to the end of it. In the hotel, I was lying there. For the first time in my life, I felt afraid. I've been through battles and battles and battles, and never been afraid. This was a new sensation for me. I had never felt fear. I had never allowed myself to feel fear, I should specify. I pushed it down. And it did not bother me one bit to do that, because I was just that kind of person in that lifetime. I was able-bodied, I was strong, I had a lot of energy, a lot of quick-witted, I could do anything. So I didn't need to feel anything. I didn't need to feel feelings like that. I didn't need to feel things like fear, because anxiety does you no good. It does you no service. It might occasionally, like if you're about to walk into a drug den or something, and you get a feeling, yeah, you should probably pay attention to that, but that's not. It is a kind of anxiety. Yes, you should listen to anything that seems to make sense, that's telling you not to walk into something, okay? Or not to let someone else walk in to your space. That's an instinct, though. And we have trouble telling the difference between emotions and instinct. I'll tell you the difference. Emotions are surface, and they're not useful most of the time. They might be pleasant, but they're usually not useful. Women tend to be more emotional than men, so we get denigrated, and our intelligence gets denigrated. We're not dumber than men. It's a different kind of intelligence. And I won't go into that because you'll just call me a sexist or something, because I noticed the differences. Not supposed to do that. Oh, not supposed to notice stuff. Oh, I'm so fucking sorry that I have a brain. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm not very happy right now because I kind of doxed myself, and now every time I leave town, they're like freaking out because they can't figure out where I am to torture me. So they're following me everywhere. They're trying to break the bus drivers, everything. So it's only so often that I can do it, because I just don't have. I have to save up the energy. I have fibromyalgia and arthritis, and I had a lot of things. But in that lifetime, I was very able-bodied. In my last one, I was able-bodied. But what I didn't realize was I was completely exhausted from my life. I lost all of my friends, my compatriots. The men that I fought with were my family. And when I lost all of them, that was it for me emotionally. I knew that was it. I must have been about 40 or 50, and that was it for me. I had some kind of injury that I don't remember that healed, but I never went back. Because my guys weren't there. What's the point? They don't know me. Nobody knows me anymore. That was it. That was like, you just lost your whole family. You can't make another one. That's it. That part of your life is over. And that's when I started questioning myself a little bit, but I didn't reach any conclusions because people weren't forthcoming with me about myself. They didn't tell me anything about myself. I guess they were basically okay with me and they didn't want to rock the boat. So they didn't. They just didn't. Nobody confronted me. Well, I sent for this woman that was either my daughter, illegitimate, or an illegitimate affair that I had. It was one or the other, and I don't know which one it was. I idealized her very much. That was the epitome of my emotional capacity that I felt for her. She wasn't particularly pretty, but she was like statuesque. In those days, a 5'7" woman or 5'8" was considered to be quite tall, and it wasn't considered to be an attractive feature for a woman at that time, especially since she was probably taller than me. But I didn't care about that. I didn't care about looks even. I just loved her very much. Something's making me cough so hard that my eyes are watering. I don't know who they think I'm talking about, but they're going to pretend it's someone they know, and I'm not supposed to talk about the person. No, I know exactly who that person is in this lifetime, or was. Probably passed on by now. I don't know. He'd be in his late 70s now. And I gotta say that when you're remembering past lives, you remember all the things that other people are feeling too. As she sat there holding my hand, patiently waiting for me to die, she was not thinking all good thoughts about me. I had no idea, no clue, right? I was just blissfully unaware that anyone hated me. Anyway. And it helped having her there. Those big brown eyes looking down at me, just as beautiful as ever. It really helped. I wasn't a person to be dependent, but I just needed someone's hand to hold. And she was the first person that I would choose for that at the time. And she did it dutifully, but the whole time she's thinking, I really hate this motherfucker. I really wish he'd just fucking die already. I was a military guy. I had no social graces whatsoever, and that probably includes in the boudoir. Nobody ever took me by the hand when I was a young lad and showed me the ropes and showed me how to pleasure a woman. It just wasn't a thing that much back then, unless you were French, right? But anyway, because the French, they already knew how to do all that stuff. But if you were British, you didn't cry. If you were a man and you were British, you didn't cry and you didn't ask how to please the woman. You didn't. It just wasn't macho. I don't remember sex back in that lifetime. Don't get me wrong. I'm not remembering any of that. But I have a sneaking suspicion I was bad at it. But in this life, I couldn't be better. I don't think I could be any better unless you need an acrobat, because I'm definitely not that. But I used to be pretty close. Anyways, I want my old friends to know that I'm face blind, and if you approach me, I'm not going to know it's you, especially after all these years. Please, just fucking say my name, and then I'll know that you know me, you know? For some reason, no one ever thinks to do that. They just walk by me and act insulted when I don't recognize them. Why don't you use my name? That's what people did in the olden days. Hello. Again. I just had to wait out the annoying noises. Never mind. Let's continue. I drifted off, you know. I was only scared until I was like airborne. Once I was in the atmosphere looking down, I was ready to go. I just went. I didn't even look back. I was just up into the sky, no longer scared. Free, but still exhausted. Still wound up. Still all wound up, you know, from my life. My being the strict person. It was very exhausting. I didn't even know. It was second nature to me. I had no idea I was trying at all. It just came naturally to me to be this guy, this manager guy, this boss with the keys. And I had this ring of keys that I was always rattling. And some things never change, you know. I'm still the key master. I don't employ anyone, but people are still all around me all the time. I realized I have a purpose in my life, but I think this is the first lifetime that I actually realized that since the very first one. Now I need to tell you about the drifting off part when I'll call myself John because I think my name was John, but I don't know for sure that it was John. But I was in the military. You could probably look it up if you know how. In the 1600s, probably the late 1600s, maybe. Guns were pretty rudimentary back then. We had very few people had pistols. Almost everyone had a sword. So I'm saying 1600s. 1700s, they started using bayonets and stuff. Rifles. Not so much in the 1600s. I was the only person I knew that had a pistol. I love that thing. I cleaned it like twice a day. And my boots were always shiny, by the way. But let's not digress. I know that without remembering it, that my boots were always shiny. Because I'm obsessed with leather. In this lifetime, I'm obsessed with the smell of it. With taking care of it. And just in a way that doesn't seem to come from anywhere, you know? And the same thing with sewing. We carried these little sewing kits around with us. We're always sewing tears and rips and sewing buttons on. Working with leather and these little sewing jobs, not like sewing a whole outfit, but just sewing a tear or a seam. It calms me. Like immediately I'm calm because that was my coping mechanism when I was between battles. And it's still the same. I haven't changed that much, even though it was over 300 years ago. I am pretty much what that guy was, only the female version of it. If he had been born disabled. I was sort of born disabled because of the sleeping pills that the doctor gave my mother. Told her to take them every night instead of as needed. So I was born an addict and probably ADHD and OCD as well, which were not diagnosed much in those days. And girls were never diagnosed with ADHD, which I probably had, even as a child. And so I was like the disruptive one in the family, and I just got vilified because back then, if somebody acted up, they were just a bad kid, and they put the bad kid label on them, and that was the easiest thing to do. And there was no special needs kids. It was just, if you weren't deaf and blind, and you didn't have cerebral palsy or spina bifida, you were just a bad kid. Imagine that guy pent up in a damaged, malfunctioning body. Imagine the rage of someone that was meant to be a warrior, and they're relegated to whatever they can get. Whatever they can get in life, that's it. That's all they get. When you add a few facial scars to that, a girl's not supposed to have scars, right? So they run away scared. Oh, run away! She's got scars on her face and she doesn't have a dick. Something wrong there. I don't have a dick, by the way. In case someone told you I did, because I wouldn't be surprised. But when I talk about my past life, I'm not talking about this life, okay? I'm talking about the 1600s, which I remember just as vividly as I remember my childhood in this life. Just as vividly. I'm not as much detail, maybe, because I don't need to remember all that. I don't need to know what it felt like to pee with a penis. I don't care. I don't care. I have no penis envy whatsoever. When I was born in this life, one day I was in the family bed, because we had like 3 beds in our parents' bedroom, so we could all sleep in the same room when we were little. And I didn't mind it. I was sleeping between my snoring parents. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I can't remember if I'm a girl or a boy. I'm only 3 years old. I actually had to look. And I remember being so relieved that there was no penis, that it was a vagina. So if you think that I'm envious, you're barking up the wrong tree. I don't even have an envious bone in my body. When I saw the new AI glasses, I felt a little twinge, but that's it. That's it. I got it under control. I can't afford it. I got it under control. I have my envy under control. I'm 62, and I've had lots of time to do it. I've had lots of time to think because I'm disabled, and it's been a blessing, really. When I used to have to work and I had to explain to people why I was the way I was, and they didn't see it as a disability, they just saw it as a behavioral problem. That was tough for me. I ended up quitting a lot of jobs because I couldn't handle the stress. I didn't know how to feed myself proper meals, even though I did, but I didn't, And then, anyway, so in that past life, when I died, I rose up and I was floating around, and it was dark. It must have been nighttime. I just floated from darkness to darkness. And I didn't notice any kind of change. And I wasn't afraid. I just went to a black place. I had no body, no astral body, nothing but a consciousness. I had no eyes to detect light anymore, but I could see light on my way there. I could see light on the horizon. That must have been God. But I wasn't even thinking about him, because I think I was an atheist in that life. So I just went to the black place and stayed there for like 300 years. And I think it's very important to note that, because people have tried to imply that I was up to no good in some of my lifetimes since then, which is impossible, because I remember every moment in the black place. There was no sleeping. It was just decompression. I was decompressing very slowly from my condition of permanent tension and uptightness, which I didn't even know I had, because I was so good at it, at holding all this stuff. I had to let it go. It took like 300 years to do it. And then as soon as it was gone, I started to feel like the fuck? I need some company. I'm bored. You know, I'm lonely. I'm bored. 300 years of this shit. It never occurred to me to go to God, go to paradise. I don't think I believed in it. Or I just knew that my mission was not finished. I don't know. I couldn't tell you which one it is. Right? But the reason why I'm allowed to remember this is because it's very important, because people will try to put me on the earth between 1700 and 1963, and I just was not here at all. I was frankly frightened, scared. I'd never been scared in my life, but I had a memory of all the things I've been through, and I was really scared to come back to this planet, and it sort of delayed me. I probably would have come back in the 40s for the war, or the 20s or the 40s, and been involved in the war, or at least witnessed it. Probably wouldn't have been involved. I probably would have witnessed it. Would have been one of the war wives or daughters or something, because my grandfather was in that war. So I probably would have been, hey, maybe my grandparents would have had a daughter. They never had a daughter. They had 5 boys. Maybe they would have had a daughter if I had decided to be born then. And it would have been me. And I'd be really old by now, almost dead. But maybe it wasn't meant to be. Maybe I was meant to be born when I was born. I came back exactly, precisely the moment when I couldn't stand the boredom anymore. And when I go back into that memory and remember, and I could take mushrooms or something, and mushroom tea, and go back into that, I will cry and weep and mourn and wail, and it was so lonely. I can't even put it in a proper perspective. But I didn't feel that way at the time. I felt bored mostly. More bored than scared. Once I got more bored than scared, I found myself descending to the earth, and there it was. I could see it right in front of me. I could see Nova Scotia from the air. It looks like a lobster. And somehow I knew my dad was there. He'd probably been my father before in other lifetimes. Most likely. I had absolutely no doubt about him. But his choice of a wife, I wouldn't have chosen her. That's my mother. She had been my mother before. She was a karmic mother to me. But we never got along very well, and she never understood me. And when I got damaged, she just decided to make the scapegoat out of me. But she did the best she could with what she knew and what she understood in life. She was trying to protect herself and her other kids, and even her husband. She didn't tell him what happened to me when I was little. But see, the thing is, people that remember you from other lives will sometimes find out through esoteric knowledge. They'll find out where you're going to be born, who you're going to be born to, and I think genetically you tend to be born in the same line or close to the same exact line of family that you were in. Well, I guess the girl I probably did get her pregnant, right? She probably wasn't my daughter in that last life, in the 1600s. She probably did have my kid, but she probably had to pass it off as someone else's kid. I think she was, I think there were bohemians. So it wasn't unheard of for them to have a kid out of wedlock, but it still would have been a horrible burden for her to carry. And people would have shamed her over it. And I never would have caught on that she even had my kid. I never even would have even caught on to that, because that's how stolid I was, I would have never caught on, because she wouldn't tell me. She was very secretive, that one. I think so. And so my DNA ended up being passed down only through that line. Only through the bohemian line. That's the only place where it could go, because I didn't impregnate anyone else, probably. Except for a bunch of hookers that immediately got abortion because soldiers like hookers. She was possibly the only really normal girl that I had ever been with that wasn't a prostitute. Most likely. Because I was a soldier and that's all I was. I wasn't interested in being anything else. Like a family man or something. That would have been fake on my part. I couldn't be fake. Even then, I couldn't be fake. Even when I was an atheist, it could not be fake. It just felt so gross to me. And I would lose my self-respect, so I didn't do it. So I remember descending down into Nova Scotia, and that's where the memory ends. And that was 1963. Also verified, like what I saw, also verified by something I saw just before that, where I was passing through like a membrane from this life into the last one. There's like a membrane that you have to go through. It's not painful. I could see my soul, which looks like a infinity symbol, but it's got 4 or 5 dimensions to it, so it's hard to draw it. And it was alive, and it was floating and on the water, and there was like liquid electricity flowing through it, one side to the other probably, or it could have been like flowing separately or into each other. I couldn't tell, right? I couldn't tell from what I was looking. I think it's meant to be a mystery that I'm supposed to find out the answer to it or something. And they won't tell you anything, and they'll give you amnesia, like the gods or whatever. God gives you amnesia so that you can learn things. Because if you already knew this, you wouldn't go ahead and learn that, right? You would think you were so smart you didn't have to learn anything. That's why they do that, but sometimes they abuse the power and put you in harm's way because you don't know yourself and you don't know what you're here for, because they give you amnesia for any kind of reason now. It's not necessarily for your benefit, and it's not necessarily angels doing it. It could be devils in human form, because I don't believe there's any evil outside of the human world. I've never seen it. I've only seen humans being evil. I've never seen any other creatures being evil. So when they talk about devils, they're really talking about the human tendency to be a devil. That's really what they mean. They're trying to explain evil to you in the best way they can. But don't get the impression that it's somehow separate from you. Because one thing they're right about in Christianity is we're all born sick. And that's the truth. We're all born with stuff to work out, or we would not be here. I personally had a guilt complex. I had survivor guilt and family guilt, because they expected me to make everything perfect for them, even though they insisted on marrying weevils, evil people. I call them weevils. And they have a certain look sometimes even that is like the evil look. And they look like actual weevils. And no, they're not Jews. Jews have a nice nose. They have a pretty nose. I like their big noses. I like them. They're handsome, you know? I think Jewish men are the handsomest men in the world. I really do. Well, Semitic men. I think they're the most handsome. And the handsomest women, it's like a toss-up between Asian, like everywhere around India and Iran and Syria, and it's a toss-up between them and the French. French women are just hot. They're just so hot. Anyway, I'm not gay. I'm an artist. I'm very passionate, and I love people, and I appreciate them, and I want to write my memoirs for you so that you can unmask all the liars. My memoirs are going to unmask literally thousands of lies that have been keeping this country down. Canada. My beloved Canada. I've never lived anywhere else. I never thought I'd leave it for good. My whole life, I never dreamed I would want to leave. I knew I wanted to travel, but I always thought I'd come back here. Now I'm not so sure. I'm a dual citizen. Canada, US, because my mom's American. And she was American when I was born. And I've had an American passport before. And I think that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to end up being a snowbird, probably. I don't want to wait at all. So if anybody has any ideas, I would leave anytime. I'm living in a shared house. It's fine, but I was never meant to be a long-term solution to my life. And I'm looking around, and the housing crisis is so dire. I'm going to end up living in a tent before I find anything else. So I really prefer America in so many ways, because you can actually do things there. You can actually be creative, and China doesn't run the entire place. I think people here are so caught up with their image, their public image, that they don't really care what happens to them or their kids anymore. I have a problem with that. Anyways, so first memory I remember is only because I was hypnotized, and this is kind of like proof that the hypnosis was very good, and it wasn't leading me in any way. And after I went through this membrane thing where I saw my soul, I was at my first birthday party when I was a year old, in this homemade high chair that my dad must have made it. They just kind of bolted this piece of like particle board onto an old high chair, and they would just lift you out of it or into it. Like, once you were in it, you could not move. You could not get out of there. There was no getting out of there until they actually lifted you out of it. And I remember my mother smiling at me, so big and happy. I'd never seen her that happy since. Never. Because she was never happy after we moved. When we lived in the country, she had a full-time job. She was always happier when she was working. She was a school teacher. She really liked it. She assumed that after we moved to town, which was kind of her own mistake to want to do that, she assumed she would get a job there. They wouldn't give her a job. She got discouraged, started doing a lot of shopping. And God, I don't think she worked hardly at all when we were there. It was very depressing for her. It just showed, so she kept having babies. It was almost like it was an evil plot, because the teachers we had, half of them didn't even like kids. And the other half had tenure. They were there a long time. Most of them, yeah. Anyways, the fact that I could remember my mother that way and not feel any fear towards her, it really legitimizes the whole thing, everything I saw. Because I actually felt it again too. I felt what it was like to love my mother. I didn't remember how that felt. because we did not get along until after I had my baby, much, much, much later. And she started to identify with me a little bit when I had my son, because she always wanted a son. And she had 5 daughters, and she couldn't manage to have a son to carry him to term. She lost 2 babies that were both boys in their second trimester. She was really traumatized by that. It messed her up. It messed her up just as much as I think what happened to me. You know, after they came back from Expo, I was all damaged because of somebody that walked into the spare room in my aunt and uncle's house. Put his big, huge hand over my face and smothered me until I was unconscious, and I was fighting it. It was a repressed memory, which is a known phenomenon. It's not some kind of made-up thing. It's what the mind automatically does so that you can carry on with your childhood. But I never did like that guy. I always hated him. All the kids hated him. He would come around Halloween, walk into our house and steal our Halloween candy. And we're supposed to just put up with it because a tractor fell on his head once or something. So he's allowed to molest children too, I guess, because the tractor fell on his head. Okay, I'll let you pursue that one. Huge cover-up, including murders, to cover that one up. I don't know what happened to me the rest of the time. I've had people tell me things. I have no way to verify it right now. But someday I will, and it's going to be in the book. Sometimes they just like to mess with people, and they have these little programs, and it's just an excuse to molest children. That's all any of it is. All their money, all their status, China, the entire country. It's all about having sex with babies. That's what it's all about. So if you give them virtue for that, it's on your head. That's all it's about for them. And most of them are old. And they like to brainwash younger people into doing the same kind of things, the raping and stuff. That's where October 7th came from. But Putin said that he had intel on that, and he said it was planned in the West. Well, I found evidence of that here in Canada, but I'll save that for another time. I was proof positive they were planning it as early as 2015. But that's not really news when you know what. Now that we have translation throughout social media, we know what they've been saying all along, the terrorists, right? In this country, Canada, I get punished for using the word terrorist to myself in my own room. I get accused of being a racist for using the word terrorist, not even referring to any specific name or person or nationality, just the word terrorist. I'm not allowed to say it. And isn't that peculiar? Because in China, they make a big deal about being anti-terrorist and anti-fanatic. They're fanatics. Communism is a cult, okay? This is one cult telling the other cult what to do. And they work together, just like this. The only reason they come down on they make an example of a few Muslims is so you will think they are scientific and secular over there. No, everything they believe is about having sex with children. That's what it's all about. And they've killed off so many females there that they basically turned all the females into prostitutes against their will. And they're trafficking them all the time. Witnesses. We've had witnesses that have put their lives in danger to tell us about this, to warn us. It's the same with the organ trafficking. And they will use every excuse. Oh, these were fanatics. Yeah, maybe some of them were fanatics, but you probably made those fanatics in the first place so that you could sell their organs later. You said you control everything. That means you get the blame for everything. You confessed when you say, oh, we control everything. We've always had control. We've always controlled everything. That's you taking responsibility. You didn't know that, did you? That's your confession, dear. Dear China, you confessed. We know everything now. Thank you. All right. Duh. Infantile. They're infantile adults looking to stick their dicks into anything that moves and breathes. That's it. And if it bleeds and screams for mother at the same time, it's that much more exciting for them. Wake up. Smell the fucking roses, Moses. I'm sick of this shit. I mean, it's stressing me out all over again. It took me 300 years to decompress the last time. You really want to give me a fucking stroke? People, I am going to hold a grudge, okay? I promise you. If you do that to me in this lifetime again, you stress me out like that, and then you put the blame on me, I'm going to hold a grudge. And when you get to the other side, you're going to have to face me in person. Do you understand the implications of the words that are coming out of my big mouth? Do you? Look, get a load of my teeth before they knock them all out, because they think you won't listen to me if I don't have teeth, because I'm just a woman, and women are only good for one thing. And you didn't think they thought that way in China, but that's what it's all about. That's what communism is all about, people. Anyway, don't get me started, because I can get myself started. Anytime, bitches. I'm ready. I'm ready for this world to change. I'm not, plodding along behind, okay? A lot of people are. They think they're on the cutting edge because they watch Alex Jones. Oh, you're just starting to watch that now? I've been watching it since 2012, okay? Or I was, until I found out he is just as big of a predator as anybody else out there. Yep, that's right. That's who you've been listening to gossip from. Not a good idea. He will go after your kids. He will go for your kids. One way or another. You let him in. Especially if you do his dirty work for him and you're on his payroll. At that point, he thinks that your kids are his kids. And he can do whatever he wants with them. I know how he thinks. I can't explain it to you right now, but I know. Let's just say he's secretly Canadian. Probably related to me. Distantly. Through Alexander Halliburton way the fuck back. Okay. Who was an admiral? He looks just like him. I mean, he looks exactly like him. It could even be a reincarnation of him. If so, that guy must have been a real bastard. Alexander Halliburton. My great-great-grandfather, I think. Yeah, he's even named after him, so. He looks exactly like him, and he's named after him, so. And that's partly why he hates me. Because we're related. Unfortunately. I wanted to tell you about my first lifetime, and I was supposed to lead in, somehow in my brain, had it all backwards. Like, I remember things backwards. I don't remember the proper order of things. I always remember it backwards. I remember the last thing first and stuff. But like I said, all my lifetimes are pretty clear to me, except for certain parts. The things I can remember are just like regular memories. And I was thinking somehow I was going to segue from the last previous lifetime, and my babyhood to the first previous lifetime, which was 2,000 years ago. And I've always known it was 2,000 years ago, but I didn't know how I knew that. When I was 13, I had a dream where I was 13 in a past life. I didn't realize it was the first one, but it did feel like 2,000 years ago. for some reason. And I think that's where I got the idea from. And I was a schoolgirl sitting in class. I think I was very smart, very quick. And I lived in a society in Tibet where people worshiped knowledge. They really did. That was their whole thing. And not just practical knowledge, but esoteric knowledge as well. A lot of things. Of course, they had their own superstitions. They weren't perfect, but it was Shangri-La. This was as close to perfect as it gets on the earth. Peaceful Shangri-La. Beautiful mountain, rivers, streams. And we had this place where there was this place, it was like my favorite place. I always have a favorite place if I can in nature. And I was in the crook of this tree. I could sit in the crook of this tree and be suspended right over the water with my feet dangling almost into the water. And I was sitting there with my new teacher in my previous lifetime, which I couldn't remember in the dream. All I remembered was sitting in the classroom, getting ready to look out the window, and that's where the memory ended. Well, in this lifetime, in my 50s, when I was up north in Prince Rupert, somebody said to me, I can't remember if it was just words coming to me or if it was actual typed in words on social media somewhere, sort of hidden. Sometimes it's hidden in different browsers and things, like different web pages and things that I will get the word. It will come to me anonymously every time. Every time it's anonymous, right? Sometimes I get lies, anonymous lies. Sometimes I get anonymous truth. It said, we're going to reveal something important. And it just sounded like earth-shatteringly important. I'll be right back. Hey. And that night, I had the rest of the dream. The rest of the dream that started when I was 13 years old, that I couldn't remember the whole dream. The rest of the dream came to me. I'm sitting in the classroom. I'm 13. Here I am, a 50-something-year-old woman with gray hairs. You know, my hair is going snowy for the first time, really. And I'm freaking out. I'm not feeling young at all. And I had this dream. 13 years old. In Tibet. Or Nepal, I'm not sure which one. I just know it was in the Himalayas. And that part was really known to me because in that life, I knew geography. And I probably had a sense of direction too. I looked out the window in our classroom. Everything was like stucco, cement, and there was no glass in the windows. It was just like an open air situation where if it rained, we just didn't go to school. And yeah, we probably did, but if it was really storming, no, there was no school. And I was the teacher's helper. I was the oldest one in the class. It was mostly a bunch of little bratty boys and me, and most of them were my brothers. And I was expected to keep order in the class. That was my job. And the teacher wasn't there, especially. I just felt really fortunate to be there and to be learning and to be going to school. And I remember that feeling very distinctly just before I looked out the window. I don't know why that's being stressed, but it is. And to me and you. And I'm looking out the window, you know, because people have different opinions about this. Some people think that I never should have met my husband in that lifetime. Everybody's, you know, opinions are like, you know what, everyone has one. And you got to take that into consideration, even when you're dealing with so-called angels, because anything that comes through into this plane of existence as an angel or anything else is subject to the rules of flesh, because we're in the flesh right now. So Just be careful. You know, discernment. Look it up. It's a good thing to study on and research. Boundaries, discretion, discernment. Discernment, especially. I looked out the window. I knew there was a new teacher coming, like a traveling guy, famous guy. That's probably one of the reasons why I felt so fortunate that day. It wasn't just about, oh, my great life, oh, I'm so fucking great. It was a lot to do with our excitement because we knew this famous person was coming to teach us. And he was on a mule. When he came on a mule, but by the time I looked out the window, he was already standing next to the mule, talking to my teacher, and he was laughing. It was something my teacher said. He was smiling and and I saw his smiling face, and I just fell in love with him right that moment. I've never seen anything so beautiful. And the mule, when he came into the classroom, the mule followed him right into the classroom. It didn't want to be left outside. It just followed him right in the room. And so all the kids started laughing uproariously at this, and I was so embarrassed. I think I walked over and smacked one of them, actually. And then I just took the reins and I led the beast back outside. That was his first impression of me, smacking my brothers. And he thought I was a firecracker. I think he thought right from the start, what a firecracker she is. And I remember him sitting really close to us. Like, teachers don't do that, generally. They don't get right up into the front row and talk right to you, like right close and personal like he did. We were all so impressed with him, We all loved him so much. And the next thing I remember, we were at my favorite place. And I had changed my clothes because in that lifetime I had a mother who actually gave a shit what I was wearing. And for swimming. And I went down there innocent as, most 13-year-old girls should be. I was, definitely. I didn't know what sex was. I didn't know what anything was. And but I was familiar with males because of having all those little brothers. So I wasn't fazed when he basically started flirting with me and teasing me. And I just thought he was the handsomest boy in the world. Do you know he was only 16 years old? But he was already pretty tall. He got even taller, I think, later on. And I was 13, so it's not that big of a gap, That's the gray area I'm always talking about, and it's not my area because I don't judge kids having sex with kids. It's not the same thing as an adult trying to have sex with kids. I think most people understand that very well without having to have it explained to them at length. And I was sitting in my favorite spot, and he just smiled up at me innocently. I thought, and he reached down into the water, got a big handful of water, and splashed me from head to toe. And how do you know he's a Jew? I think he was a Jew. Maybe the first one. I don't know. Am I wrong to think that such a handsome traveling teacher that I met during the time when nobody knows what happened to certain people? Am I crazy? Am I? Ah! Look out! Look out, churchies. Coming for your coming for your assumptions about things. Listen up. You don't want to get this wrong. Okay? Of all the things in your life that you've ever done or thought or believed or promoted, don't make a mistake about this. Just don't. I don't lie, especially about spiritual things. I don't have a big ego that needs to be fed. I don't need sympathy. I've never had it. I don't know what it feels like to get it. Sometimes people treated me fairly. Sometimes they treated me unfairly. But sympathy? What the fuck is that? After he splashed me, I hanged on to the tree. I dipped my feet in the water and I splashed the fuck out of him from head to toe. So he knew that he'd been soaked. I have always been good at water fights. You know, I always win. I don't know why. Every water fight I've ever had, I won it. And King of the Mountain. That's another one of my favorites. Little people are good at that. I'm only 5'1". In case somebody told you I'm like 6 feet tall and I'm a giant and I have a penis. Oh! Yeah, be scared. Be very scared. Oh! Yeah, fuck you. I'm going to swear many times in this video for Jesus. Because I think if he was here, he'd be swearing at you. Calm down. Calm down. Almost done. So anyway, then he was like running over here and he got this look on his face, this devilish look on his face. Like he was going like this, like he knew he was gonna do something naughty, you know? Well, you can imagine what it was. But I didn't know what the hell it was because I never heard of sex. And he sort of lured me into the woods, and all I remember is the sunlight coming through the trees, and we're lying there, and I felt God all around me and through me and all around where we were laying. And the baby humpers will be trying to make something dirty out of it, but it wasn't like that. We ended up being married and having several babies. So whoever that guy was, he was a great teacher. The best. And I remember not the trip to where he was from, because that would have been something I probably wouldn't want to remember, as I was probably pregnant at the time. And we had to go through the desert. We had to run away from my family. And they were probably mad. And we went back to his home in the desert somewhere. Where do you suppose that might have been? Geniuses? Come on. Pull out your smarts for me. Pull out your $1 million educations for me. Tell me who that was. Tell me you got something out of it other than just student debt. And we went to the desert. I don't remember going there, but I don't remember the wedding either. I know there was one. And then I would have gotten used to his family, and then I wouldn't have been so stressed at that point. And I think my mother-in-law was probably really sweet to me. I was this tiny little girl, like not even 5 feet tall in that lifetime. I was tiny. I was like a tiny miniature human. And I always wore some kind of thing on my head. some kind of a I think people thought it was pretentious, but it was just my culture, my religion. Like my religion was possible to merge with his. I was probably a Buddhist, and I was able to reconcile my beliefs with his because he was in a new religion basically himself and trying to get away from the legalized kind of religion of the Pharisees, right? So remember that when dealing with Jews, a lot of stuff that they believe he didn't believe in at all that living by the letter of the law instead of the spirit, he was not down with any of that. Anyways, I remember how much I loved him, how magical it was to me to be with him. I remember little kids crying in the morning while we were making love. The kids in the same room, like really close, all crying at the same time by the time we were done. All crying at once in unison, And he was like out the door. you know. As a good husband did in those days, he just wasn't there much, They weren't into changing diapers in those days, I don't think. They always usually had their mother around to do that stuff if the wife couldn't do it, like if she was sick or something. It would be the mother's job. It would be the mother-in-law that made sure everything was good. So he didn't have to worry his head about all this stuff. He went out there and he lived his life. I wasn't an impediment to him. I made sure that the home fires kept burning while he was out there doing his thing. And the only thing I remember after that is the day that I died. And I'm not sure what happened. I ended up in a desert, in a dry riverbed, surrounded by the rabble from Europe that came to take over our desert and occupy us. And for some reason they saw my husband, as some kind of problem, probably because we lived on the borderlands and he was always walking back and forth with his animals because we were farmers. I remember we had an orchard. Just being there was enough to get us killed, And I was lured out when he was missing. He'd been missing for 2 months. I thought he was dead. Someone told me he was dead, and there was some kind of urgent reason why I had to go somewhere. When I went there, it was an ambush, and I think I was attacked, first of all. Then they waited for him to get there. They used me to lure him out. And I remember he was angry with me, probably for allowing myself to be lured out. And he pushed me down because he was so angry with me. And then these soldiers came, and they had spears, just like in the movies. And he just went along with them, not realizing that as he turned away, one of the rabble had a rock, and he threw it right at my head. I was dead instantly. As soon as I got up, he knocked me down. But I was fine. Like, he didn't hurt me. Like, my husband didn't hurt me by pushing me down. It's just, I thought he was dead. After like 2 months, I thought he was dead. Yes, there's no way my husband would stay away from me this long without word. There's no way he would do that to me. He's dead. I believed he was dead. Stupid, right? Stupid. But I really believed it. Fatalism. Not a good quality. I'm not like that. I was never a fatalist again after that. Never. You never know. There's always hope. Don't give up hope, or you could end up giving up hope if you give up hope. Don't do that. Have faith. And then he just walked away with the soldiers, and I know, I mean, he would have had to, right? And I know that he didn't survive. I just know it. So that's all I remember, folks. I feel so much better having told you. And please try not to read into it that I'm something. I don't think of myself as anything, and I don't have a self-image even. So that woman that I used to be, that's the closest thing to a self-image that I have. That's who I am on the other side. I'm her.